Hi guys, it's Alex Wanzer with your Unit 2 virtual preview. I hope everyone is having a great start to their year. Unit 2 is one of my favorite units because I feel like scholars really start to understand the concepts of the unit. I'm going to go over what you will see in this unit as well as give you a breakdown of my AML for this unit. So, hope you enjoy. Let's get started. Alright, so for the purpose of this unit, we will first start with that. So the purpose of this unit is to get scholars to understand that the world they know is not the only world that exists. Scholars will begin practicing the skill of identifying similarities and differences, comparing and sorting groups, as well as using adjectives to describe objects. This is an important skill that will be carried over and applied in future units. I kind of broke it down in humanities and science so it would be easier to understand. So for humanities, scholars will be able to get exposure to ways communities are organized in their community as well as other communities around the world. They will learn that there are similarities and differences in people, which means that how they organize themselves could be different. I know a lot of times scholars think their way of doing things is the only way because they have not been taught otherwise. They will take what they learned in the last unit around rules and authority figures at home and at school and build upon those as they learn about community figures and public officials. Scholars can also take this knowledge and apply it as they learn about their other jobs that might be different in different communities. For example, religious leaders, jobs based in technology, jobs based in agriculture, etc. And jobs that would be the same in all communities, so mailman, bus driver, or other transportation jobs. Okay, so for science, the main purpose for scholars to be able to do is to take what they know about being a scientist and apply that to the study of rocks. They will be able to explain as a scientist what they observe in a lab or experiment and take the information and apply it to what they've learned. They will also compare, sort, and use adjectives based on shape, color, and texture to describe rocks. They will do a hands-on learning experience with the rocks and physically sort them in the learning environment. They will also begin to document their observations in writing and pictures that they can share with a peer, the class, or the teacher. Okay, so looking at the humanities scope and sequence, the important vocabulary for scholars to know is identify, music, clothing, food, authority figures, home, school, community, and jobs. And the readiness TEKS are K9A, which is to identify authority figures in the home, school, and community, and K.7A, which is to identify jobs in the home, school, and community. I would make sure you hit these TEKS, especially because they do not spiral into future units. And again, you can see how the readiness TEKS progress and what they will be when scholars get to first and second grade. In the science scope and sequence, the important vocabulary for scholars to know is observe, describe, compare, sort, size, shape, color, textural, natural, properties, soil, and rocks. The readiness TEKS are K.7A, which is to observe, describe, compare, and sort rocks by size, shape, color, and texture. Even though there is only one readiness TEKS, which will not spiral again, I would be sure to also hit K.7B and K.7C because these are also not going to spiral into future kindergarten units. This is also really important because when scholars get to 5th grade, they will focus heavily on rocks and the different types. Scholars will not get this material again until 1st grade. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and go over the breakdown of my annotated model lesson and how I would teach this. So for the opening, I'm going to make a KWL chart for community helpers. So the K is what I know, the W is what I want to know, the L is what I've learned. I will first ask scholars what they know and what they want to know about community helpers. Then they will share out whole group. I will then play the brain pop on community helpers and ask scholars what they learned after they watched the video. Doing these activities will activate scholar knowledge and engage them in the lesson. For the intro to new material, I will explain that in this unit we will be looking at different people and different jobs within our community. I will explain what a community is, and I will explain why we have jobs. I will then go to explain that depending on where we are, our jobs can be different from one place to another. Example, our jobs at school versus jobs at home. I will explain that these jobs have to be done in order to keep ourselves organized. Scholars should be participating in the classroom discussion, and teachers should model exemplar scholar responses. For the guided practice and independent practice, scholars should have the opportunity to talk about the different jobs in their community. They may need sentence stems to get the discussion started. For example, the different jobs in my community are. This is going to be a time for the teacher to address any misconceptions scholars might have. And during the independent practice, scholars will show a mastery of the lesson by doing a matching community helper activity. Teachers can pull a small group or circulate the room to make sure scholars are on task. For the closing, teachers should solidify key takeaways and use a closure activity or exit ticket. Scholars should be able to reflect on their thinking, capture any key takeaways, and understand the significance of the lesson in order to complete the closure activity. The exit ticket could be scholars seeing two different communities, and they have to distinguish which one is a home community and which one is a school community. Or you could always do a 3-2-1 closure, and that's where you ask scholars 3 things we did in the lesson, 2 things they learned, and 1 thing scholars still have questions about. Okay, so now let's go over the misconceptions. For the humanities misconceptions, scholars may not understand the director-dean role. They may confuse roles of authority figures in their location, so classroom, office, or cafe. Scholars may not know the rules come from adults who are in charge of them, and they may think that the rules are the same depending on who is in charge of them. So scholars might not think special teachers or other instructional staff make the rules for their own classroom in which they have to follow. They also may think the classroom teacher is the only one in charge. Scholars may not understand the vocabulary of difference and similarity. For the science misconceptions, scholars may not understand the appropriate language to use when describing the texture of a rock. Scholars might think all rocks are the same. Scholars may not know how to sort and compare rocks. They may not know the definition of a characteristic, which is really important to explain, because without knowing the definition of a characteristic, they will not be able to explain it. They also may not know how to explain the characteristics of water, and scholars may not know what a thought or an event is, so make sure they know that. And also for both humanities and science, whenever scholars are having a discussion, they may need a sentence stem in order to talk to others in a complete sentence. For humanities resources, there is a link to the BrainPop on Community Helpers. The login is PEAK-K5, so that's PEAK K5, and the password is BrainPop. A community helper hand activity, matching activity, and reading a map activity that scholars can do. For science, there are a lot of good resources in the STEM Scopes books. There is an example anchor chart, a rock placemat for when scholars do their hands-on rock experiment, and there's also a rock document that have pictures of different types of rocks. You can project this and have scholars tell you the different characteristics of each, or you can make them into flashcards and play a little game with scholars. And I think that's it for now. Thank you guys so much for watching. Good luck, and I hope you have lots of fun with this unit. As always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.